Everyone is the same. The only thing that makes us different are our habits. You're not your mind. Your mind is a tool, but it's been trained by society. It's been trained by religions. It's been trained by miseducation. It's been trained by the superstitions of your family.
Why is prayer so powerful?
There's a presence of life and of love and of beauty and intelligence that's everywhere. And when one prays, one is seeking to be in alignment with that rather than, God, please come save me.
What about when the tragedy strikes us personally? How can we get through that?
We ask, how can we serve? Everybody can't do everything, but everybody can do something.
Dr. Michael Beckwith is the founder and CEO of Agape International Spiritual Center and the author of the award-winning books Spiritual Liberation, Transcendence, and the mega hit Life Visioning Process. He's a sought-after speaker and meditation teacher who's received numerous humanitarian awards for his work. He's the host of the Take Back Your Mind podcast, and he's here today to help you to take back your mind. Right now, as of this recording, there's always a lot going on, as you know.
Always. In the world of phenomena, changes are always happening.
That's facts.
Yeah.
But sometimes when things are closer to you, that proximity, it really does irritate you more and get your attention. And we're experiencing right now, some terrible fires took place here in Los Angeles. And again, that proximity is extremely close. A lot of friends, colleagues lost their homes or they're displaced. Schools were shut down. The list goes on and on. We just had a friend who just left the studio who shared his daughter's home.
Right.
Was burnt to the ground.
Right.
And so what I wanted to do today was to share your wisdom and your insights, because sometimes larger things that affect a lot of people happen. Sometimes it's just an individual thing where tragedy takes place in our lives. And I wanted to ask you about, how do we deal with difficult times? How do we deal with tragedy when tragedy strikes in our life and it's so difficult just to pick ourselves up? What are some of the things that we can do? What are some of the mindset shifts for us to deal with tragedy?
Right. Now, I appreciate that you're bringing up this particular topic, because I, like you, know so many people who have lost their homes. A lot of good friends in Altadena, a place where I used to play as a kid. Those houses are gone. Malibu, Santa Monica, Pacific Palisades. Just at Agape 2 weeks ago, I had everyone whose house burnt down to stand up in the sanctuary so that the congregation could hold them in prayer. Over 40 people stood up in one service. So the ramifications and the connections is very real. And so as a community, I've invited people not at this point, not to get caught up in who's to blame, any of the conspiracy theories that are going around about who did it and why, and arsonists and whatever. There's all kinds of stuff that always jumps up on the social media about what's really going on. And I teach people that's not the time to ask those questions. The questions that we need to ask right now is, how can we serve? How can we make a difference in people's lives? So one of the things that we did was, obviously we vetted different organizations that would serve people in terms of the first responders, in terms of getting goods to people who need it, finding housing. We have people on our staff that vetted, what were the best organizations for that. And then we invited the global congregation to actually donate to Agape. You still make your donations to Agape, but donate to these places. We vetted them; they're real. And then we did an evening where we had all of our spiritual therapists, many of them under the aegis of, we have what is called a common unity ministry. And people like Aisha Mason, David Silverstein, Amy, a bunch of people organized an evening where people could Zoom in and just be embraced by the community in love, in prayer, in just acknowledging what has happened. So back to your question, the idea is we don't ask why and who did what. We ask, how can we serve? And everybody can't do everything. but everybody can do something. And so if the larger community realizes that the people whose houses were burnt down, spiritually we teach that they are us. There is no other. Governments and the newsreels try to make people other. Those people in that country, those people with that color skin, those people with that culture, they're other than us. And even now with this isolationist spirit, this isolationist pseudo patriotic vibrations going on, there's all kinds of othering happening. Oh, they're other. They did go back across the border and all this kind of stuff. There is no other. Spiritually, we're one for real. It's not even a philosophy. In terms of deep mysticism and quantum physics, you are me and I am you. We're all springing from the same source. So I try to remind people that if somebody's hurt, that's us. And so we have to ask, what is it that I can do? Now, obviously, we can't do everything. But if you ask the question, what is it that I can do? Something will spring up in your awareness. It may be small to you, but if everybody does something small, it becomes big. A bunch of little tiny raindrops eventually become a flood, And so I invite individuals to realize that whatever's going on, whether it's Altadena Palisades or anywhere in the world, that's an extension of who we are. Don't let governments shrink your mind and say those are other people. They're not. They're us. So I think if people grow in that way and we come together as community, how we can serve, we can make a big difference. Not just in this particular tragedy, but we can make a big difference just in terms of the evolution of our communities. That those questions need to be asked. Yeah.
Yeah. What I admire about your work is that you bring together ancient wisdom, modern insights as well, but also science.
Yeah.
And, when you say that we are one and we're all connected, this is also coming from a place of truly today we have technology that demonstrates if there's a tragedy that happens on the planet, we have technological advances that let us know, like there's a spike in energy. Right. And also it happens like some of these things like the Global Consciousness Project.
Yes.
Pick up the data before it happens.
Yes. Something's already been set in motion. So even before it manifests, it's already set in motion. It's like Kirlian photography can take a picture of your auric field or take a picture of a tree. And the tree doesn't show any sign of disease yet. But in the field, you can see the disease that'll show up in months or a couple of years. So you're right. The science is showing that we are connected. Things are set in motion. And it also shows, and you may have done a lot of research on this, that when people are doing an altruistic act, generosity, helping, and people see it, it boosts their immune system.
Yeah.
It makes coherence of the brain. Just seeing somebody do good or hearing about somebody doing good affects our life for the better. We're all connected. And so I try to keep people out of the pollution of othering and blaming. Not to say there aren't nefarious people out here doing nasty things, but it's not going to help. Only thing that's going to help is how can I serve? How can I help? Even if it's minuscule. And then if someone hears about it or sees it, it's going to affect them. It's going to make them more expanded to want to assist. And why not create that kind of contagion? The contagion of good works, the contagion of prayer, contagion of holding each other high. Why not have that kind of contagion on the planet? And use social media for that kind of contagion rather than for creating division and separation and hate. Yeah.
It sounds good, Rev. But it's so easy. It's so easy to get tied up in the negativity. It's so easy to blame. It's so easy to start pointing fingers and to be angry and upset.
Yes.
Why not do that? I mean, it's right there. It's so tangible and visceral.
Well, the ego gets juice from being angry and blaming. And it gets being right. That's the ego. And so what happens? Tonic chemicals start to flow through the body. When the ego is juiced up, those chemicals flow and people become addicted to those chemicals. So they feel alive when there's drama. They feel alive if they're right. They feel alive if they're blaming or putting somebody down. And so as one grows spiritually, your aliveness feels more like joy and bliss and ecstasy. It's not that hard tonic chemicals of I'm right. Oh, let's go get him. Oh, let's go kill him. You know, it's a different feeling. It's lighter. It's more blissful. But eventually, people begin to realize that adds to your longevity. It adds to your creativity. It adds to your coherence of the brain. You start to think more properly. But as you say, it's very difficult because the ego clutches on people, feeds them with this juice of chemicals that individuals become addicted to. There are people on the planet, as you know, that they're addicted to being mad. You know, they're addicted to being angry. They're addicted to being right. And eventually there's a toll, you know, a disease or symptoms or something to that effect. And so running a spiritual community, I'm always trying to help people come out of that addictive behavior and come into a higher space. And eventually people don't recognize themselves as to how they used to be. You know, they, instead of being a reactionary, they become responsive to a higher frequency. Yeah.
Yeah. So we've got fields of psychoneuroendocrinology, psychoneuroimmunology.
Yes.
And just understanding, again, when you mentioned witnessing an act of kindness, an act of service and how that affects your immune system, truly it's our perception,
Yes.
right? So our psychology, and it happens on the other side as well. If we're witnessing or focused on negativity and the blame and all the things going wrong, that's going to suppress the immune system. It is what it is.
Right.
This can be temporary, can happen to all of us, but if you habituate that, this is why we see higher rates of, you know, all manner of chronic diseases, in particular heart disease and things like that. If we're chronically angry and
Yes.
stressed and all
Yes.
these different things, we know how today, again, our thoughts create chemistry in our bodies. And somewhere along the way, we outsourced our ability to think. Would you agree with that?
Oh, absolutely. Most people don't think. They call what I call mentate. That is, they keep repeating the same thoughts that are of negative nature every single day. It's not called thinking. Thinking, there's a word in the Japanese language. That word is kamkuro. And that's the word for thinking. But the actual translation is returning to the realm of God. That real thinking is inspiration. Real thinking is returning to this space of inspiration and wisdom and transformational knowledge. That's thinking. Mentation is a masquerade of thinking. So what happens is people have their opinions, which are oftentimes emerging from their egoic perception or some brainwashing that they've had. You know, they have these opinions that they hold very strongly to, and they'll fight for this opinion, but it's not thinking, you see. And so they become, if somebody doesn't agree with that opinion, then they're mad and then they're reacting. So it goes back to what you're saying. So they're producing all of these chemicals based on an opinion. And listen, do you have the same opinions you had when you were 13 or 15 or 20? So, you know, in the Zen technology, there's a statement that says, above all, cherish no opinions. Realize if you're really about growing and unfolding, your opinions are going to change. You know, you don't have the same opinions you had about stuff when you were in your 20s, when you were in your 30s, if you're maturing. It keeps changing. And so as individuals become more responsive, use the word habituate. You know, I often say that everyone is the same. The only thing that makes us different are our habits, you know. And so if you have a habit and develop a habit of being open-minded, open-hearted, you have a habit of meditation, you have a habit of introspection, you have a habit of having a real intention, and backed by spiritual practice, to become a better version of yourself, you're going to be different 6 months from now, a year from now, 6 years from now. You're going to be a different being because of your habits. Yeah. And if someone maintains their habit of limitation, arguing for their limitations, arguing for their opinions, they're going to pretty much be the same 6 years from now. You'll run into them and you say, oh, wow, this guy hasn't changed. He's spouting the same nonsense he was spouting 6 years ago, you know. And so we want to habituate the inner fire and desire to be a better version of ourselves. And what is that? It's not having power over people. It's tapping into that inner power. And so that intelligence flows through you, and wisdom and kindness and generosity. The strongest people on the planet are people who can carry the frequency of compassion and love. It sounds wimpy to people who are in their ego, but love is the most powerful force on the planet. You see, compassion, kindness, that's where real people hang out at. You know, the people that we admire on the planet, you look at, you know, Nelson Mandela or Dalai Lama or Kuan Yin or King, or, you know, they emulated the desire to hold those frequencies. No one's perfect, but that's what they sought to do. So we look at those people, we say, wow, they're, you know, Bishop Tutu, he was a cool dude, you know. But our society, they'll go out and build statues to military might. They're not building statues to teachers who helped you read or become a better person. So the whole society is kind of bizarre to keep people in that hyper masculine fight or flight state, rather than honoring the people that are holding a higher frequency. Yeah.
You know, you mentioned this, and again, during this time, and this is something we're living in this life, things are going to happen. Yeah. This is not the last time.
Yeah. Oh, no.
And so being equipped with an awareness and a strategy, a different foundation is important for all of us moving forward. And you mentioned when these types of tragedies happen, for us to, number one, ask, how can I serve?
Right.
And you also mentioned how your community in particular was just coming together in prayer. So I want to ask you, why is prayer so powerful? Why does prayer work?
Yeah. People have a misunderstanding of prayer. How we pray is based on what we think this presence of God is. There's a presence of life and of love and of beauty and intelligence that's everywhere. And when one prays, one is seeking to be in alignment with that, rather than, God, please come save me. That's a prayer of an immature being. We don't put it down. It's just immature. It's not evil. It's just immature. What mysticism and what quantum science is showing us, that there's a unified field that is aware, that's conscious. And in this unified field, it is what's integrated into it is what we would call love. It's not sentimental. It's not romantic. It's a total givingness without any sense of withhold. Peace, which is the dynamic of harmonizing good, order, harmony, beauty. So when one prays, one is seeking to have an inner realization of one's oneness in this field. And what does that do? That then determines my thought, my speech, and my actions. It moves through me. So I'm not reacting to circumstances. Conditions and circumstances and situations are going to happen all the time. But now, what am I responding to? I'm not a reactionary, I'm a responder. I'm a first responder, spiritually. I'm responding to the ineffable field. So now I'm an instrument of love. I'm an instrument of compassion. I'm an instrument of generosity. I'm an instrument of asking a higher question, how can I serve? So that I'm used by this presence. So it's not begging and beseeching God to do something, because you cannot change the nature of this presence. Thank God you can't. You can't manipulate it. You can't influence it. It is what it is. But if you turn yourself to it, it influences you. You change, not God, And so when a group of people come together and hold a vibrational field of prayer for another person or for a circumstance or a condition, again, this can be measured now. Years ago, it couldn't be measured, but you can actually measure the field that's emitting from that individual or from that group of people that's actually changing the dynamic of what's happening in the world. So small groups of people that are holding that high awareness are making a difference on the planet. Some lady sitting in her house knitting and closing her eyes and having a moment of devotion and praying for her grandson or for some situation that happened in the community, she may not be on the front page of the newspaper, but she's making a vibrational difference. And somebody that's picking up that gets to be activated. You know, they're about to do something bad, and for some reason, they decide not to do it. It might be because that woman is sitting in her room just praying for the neighborhood, you know? So now, years ago, when I woke up spiritually, I used to go over to UCLA had a parapsychology department. Doesn't exist anymore. But a lot of people that we know came through there, you know, Mitchell May, Judy Orloff. There's a bunch of people that we know about that had strong psychic abilities. They would be measured, and they would do experiments on non-local prayer. So they would have instruments somewhere miles away, and then have a person sitting in the booth and just thinking like good thoughts about something or someone. And then they could measure the field with those plants or those people miles away that was coming from the people sitting in this booth. So we now have the technology to show that if a group of people is sitting here and we're thinking about the people in Palisades or Israel or Palestine or the Congo or Rwanda, wherever stuff is going on, we can make a difference. You know, but it's not begging or beseeching. It's not my God versus your God. It's not our religion versus your religion. It's where religion takes us. Religion takes us beyond religion to having an insight into our oneness with the ineffable, you see.
I think a lot of people would be surprised to know, even at this point, that even the U.S. military has been studying some of this stuff and non-local response, you know, having people come together and create a little bit of rapport, for example.
Yes.
And then placing them in different rooms.
Yes.
And putting them under, you know, what they termed as like stressful conditions.
Yes.
One of the participants and the other person who's in another room, their brain responding and their body responding as if that stimulation or that stressor is happening to them.
Yes.
Just because they're connected. There was like an entanglement.
Yes.
Right? And these are things that...
Quantum entanglement.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Einstein talked about,
yes,
you know?
Yes.
And so it's so fascinating that this is like really... Those who know.
Right.
But whether you know it or not, this is happening all the time.
Yeah, it used to be pseudoscience. I used to call it pseudoscience. It was not real science. Now it is science. And as you say, the military is involved. I know of a branch of the military that has paid millions of dollars to be a part of the SOAK technology, you know, SOAAK.com. These are frequencies that can be used to curate your brain to come into harmony, eliminate depression, eliminate anxiety, have better sleep, things like that. The military is investing a lot of money and having their particular soldiers have this technology so they can be more efficient. I know another technology is called BioCybernaut. I go there every couple of years to tune up my meditation practice. And they had a contract with the Green Beret, where the Green Beret did what you're talking about. They had what they call shared experience, where they learn how to be with each other telepathically. So they would go on assignments. They wouldn't have to talk. You see, the particular ramification that occurred that was unexpected was that they became less violent as well. They started losing, you know, their soldiering. They wanted to like bring peace to the world, you know. But yeah, this we're all connected, and now science is showing. Take a small group of people, hold a thought, hold an inner feeling. You can literally change the world. Now, that may sound woo-woo, but people don't know what the world is. Mm. The world is the condensation of beliefs, perception, points of view, positionalities, opinions that has coagulated itself into a worldview and an experience. So it's not like, here's the world, it's hard, and no, the world is just an idea that we're broadcasting. You see, so when we break free from that world and we start to do some type of inner introspection, meditation, contemplation, etc., we're coming into a different world. We're not in that world anymore. I don't live in that world. I'm living somewhere else. I see it. I can see the world. I can see the effects of that world, but I'm living in a different frequency, you see. So more and more people are opting out of that world. Just like you get stuff in the mail and say you opt out anytime. I tell people, opt out of that world. Turn off the news. Be informed, but opt out and come into a higher frequency. And now what are you? We say you're a beneficial presence in the world because you're not in it. You're in it, but you're of a higher frequency. So the world, I tell you, experiment we used to do when I was attending Morehouse College many years ago. We would take a book of matches, light a match, blow it out, and then go touch a person with a cold match. They thought they were being touched with a hot match, and they would form a heat blister on their hand. They'd get mad, and we said, no, we touched you with a cold match. Follow us. We go to another person, touch them really quick with a cold match. They would form a heat blister. So what does that say? They were producing the experience in their mind. Mm-hmm. So I sometimes say that the world is full of individuals who have swallowed a nightmare pill, and they're having the experience of that belief. Right now, there is enough for everybody on the planet. Right now, there's abundance everywhere. Right now, there's technologies to heal any disease. Right now, there's technologies to give everybody free energy, water. All of that already exists. But everyone is in a nightmare of scarcity, lack, and not enoughness. That's not even real in a universe. But people believe that. Now, a lot of the belief is because nefarious individuals have agendas for people to control and to turn people into consumers rather than creators. I'm not getting into that right now, but the fact is that people have a belief that there's not enough to go around, a belief in scarcity, a belief in limitation, a belief that they're powerless. And so what happens? Just like touching that cold match, they have a belief that's producing that experience. We're here to wake people up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember something along the lines that I learned from you of people, they're not necessarily believing what they see what they believe.
Right.
Yeah. And that example with the match and forming a blister, again, based on our beliefs, that reminded me of a study that was done by Ali Akram and researchers at Stanford. And they did a skin prick, an allergy test using creating a histamine reaction. And people would form a rash.
Right.
Very predictably. And now the researchers using a totally inert cream. Right. All right. It had no therapeutic effects. Some of the people, they said this was a histamine agonist.
Yes.
And other people is told it's a histamine antagonist. So some people, this is going to make your rash worse. This is going to make your rash better.
Better, right.
And without fail, across the board, based on what they were told, even though this was a totally inert cream, within a matter of like 10 minutes, people's rash began to go away significantly or to get worse significantly. Right. Now,
based on their belief.
Based on their belief, because the cream did nothing.
Right.
But here's what they found. The more dramatic effects that people got was based on what they believed about the doctor who told them about the cream.
Yes.
How much they believed that the doctor was competent.
Right.
Led to more dramatic results. So that talks about our belief and our beliefs in people of authority.
Yep.
But it's still happening within us. We're the one doing the job internally. It's an inside job.
Right.
And it's based on our choice of what we believe about that thing that we're being told.
Absolutely. Sometimes I'll call doctors MDs minor deities because people look at them that way, And so if the doctor has not grown and continue to study and add more to their practice, and all they have is what they got when they got out of med school, people call them hacks because they're doing the same thing 20 years later. But if a doctor is opened up and discovering real healing modalities, they're not a hack, they're a real doctor. I tell you, recently you're talking about belief. Lee, she's allergic to mangoes. And so, she would get little bumps on her mouth. And so I made this smoothie at, we were Costa Rica, somewhere. I made a big smoothie and I was putting in papaya and all this stuff. And I actually instead of papaya, put all these mangoes. And I didn't realize it till later. So I brought her smoothie to her and I didn't tell her. I mean, when I walked away, I was gone. So I know she was already drinking. I said, I gave her mangoes. So I purposely did not say anything. She's believing she's eating papaya, pineapple, avocado, and my green stuff. So I just monitor her for a while. And I didn't tell her for 2 days later. I said, you know what? You had a whole mango smoothie and nothing happened to you. You believed it was a papaya, but I was watching. So, man, I'm gonna have to tell her if something goes down so she can take care of this.
I remember that we were having dinner and she mentioned that she was allergic to mango.
Right.
And that's so again, it's just how much of this is based on our belief and our reaction to things that we're exposed to.
Right. So she may have outgrown it.
Yeah.
Or it may have been such a part of her belief growing up that it's just, I'm staying away from mangoes. And I'm not going to ever do that again. But but I did monitor it 2 days later. I had to wait for a couple of days just to make sure there was no adverse reaction.
Yeah.
And I said,
but our bodies are always reacting to things. Our body is a great thermometer in a way, reader of things in the environment. Is giving us feedback, but a lot of it is based on our perception, our stress level, our association with the thing. A lot of work's being done now around our perception of stress.
Right.
And so a stressful event might happen, but if our belief is like, this is killing me, this is breaking me down, I can't take more of this. And we're associating, producing chemistry that might affect our skin. It might affect our, cardiovascular system, our immune system, whatever the case might be. So there's so many layers. Our body is so intelligent, but our thoughts are such a powerful driver. Yeah,
we can have a stressful situation and train ourselves to feel that it's going to make us stronger, that we're going to come out of this. I wish when this was occurring, the fires, as well as a lot of people were under stress around the last election and things of this particular nature. And I basically said to the congregation, I said, I was tongue in cheek, but it was also very truthful. I was saying, listen, hang around with some people of color, some Black people, some Mexicans, some queer people, because they've been through everything and they know how to survive. It's like we've been through Jim Crow. We've been through lynching. We've been through last hired, first fired. We've been through redlining. We've been through everything under the sun. And there's still a continued growth. I said, hang around with some Jewish folks, hang around with some oppressed people, and you'll get a feeling that whatever's going on in the world, you're going to make it through, And that's an inner belief we have from our grandparents and great-grandparents. It's like, there's tough times, but there's something in us that's bigger than the times, And so you can use a negative situation and say, this is going to kill me. Or you could use a negative situation that says, I can't wait to see the blessing that comes out of this. I can't wait. There's going to be something so deep. With that mindset, you become available to insight and wisdom that you won't get if you're in blame, shame. This is going to kill me. It's not going to happen.
This is exactly what I was going to ask you about, was when the situation happens personally, like there's a tragedy in my life.
Right.
It can be obviously difficult to just grab my mind and to put it on the blessing potential in the situation. So what about when the tragedy strikes us personally?
Yeah.
How can we get through that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'll answer it in two ways. One, if someone already has a practice, and I'm not talking religion here. I'm just talking about a mindful, meditative, prayerful. It sounds religious, but it's really not. It's really very scientific. Then when something does happen, you have a go-to. If a person doesn't have that, it's a little bit more difficult because their mind hasn't been trained yet. The mind is still controlled by the news media or opinions or the points of view your father had or something like that. You haven't learned to think for yourself. So when something strikes you very hard, it is good to find someone that can assist you back into an awareness that This is a negative thing that happened. However, there's something about you that this didn't touch. Let's see if we can find that. So there are spiritual practitioners, and there are spiritually inclined therapists that can help an individual find their way back to the place within us, and everyone has it, that's not touched by time or experience. And again, it comes back to I teach that the universal presence, again, not a man in the sky, that answers every question, through law, answers every question that you ask. So most people, when they are unconscious, ask, what's wrong? Who's to blame? Or why me? That's where they live. Mm. Who can I blame for this? Why is this happening to me? Or what's wrong? And you know what? By law, those questions could be answered. Well, this person is to blame. This is what's wrong. The reason it's happening to you is because, it's in your ancestral code or whatever. But if you get used to asking a different question, what good is here that I presently cannot see? What if there's a blessing in all of this? You start to ask a different question, your mind will start to shape shift. New chemicals will flow through you. Your perception will change. Answers will come. I'm not saying that that's easy, particularly if you've never practiced it before. It may sound like woo-woo. But as we've just talked about, there's science now backing the shifts that take place within you if you change your perception. And so if you ask, I tell people to ask all the time, what good is here that I presently can't see? I can't see it right now, but what good is here? Or here's another question. How can it get better than this? So you're in the midst of some negative stuff and you ask, how can it get better than this? Answers will start to come. And if something's going on that's really good, instead of superstitiously thinking, oh, this is going so good, I know something bad's about to happen. But instead you say, this is really cool. How can it get better than this? Mm. Since the universe is infinite, it can get better. So I think that people need to develop different habits with their mind. My podcast is called Take Back Your Mind. So I want to help people develop different ways that they can take back their mind so it's just not running amok. It's just not doing what it wants to do. You're not your mind. Your mind is a tool, but it's been trained by society. It's been trained by religions. It's been trained by miseducation. It's been trained by the superstitions of your family. So you got to take it back. It's like your body temple. You got to train it. You got to train your mind with different questions. And when those questions become embedded, unconsciously you start to ask, how can it get better than this? What good is coming out of this? Now you're available to answers that sometimes come like a thief in the night. You start to get insights in your dreams. When you're daydreaming, and suddenly you have a great idea. Where does that come from? It's coming from the universal mind, but you're receptive to it. Every great invention, every great song that's ever been written, people have tapped into a whole different space. Yeah. Mm.
I learned something from you to give words or description to something I experienced on what I felt to be on accident. Uh-huh. When I was trying to get my health together, it was chronically, why me? Why me? Why is this happening to me? Why won't somebody help me? And eventually just like a switch was flipped in my mind and I started to ask, what can I do to feel better? Right? And that evolved, as I shared with you before, to how can I be the healthiest person in the world? Yes. Right? These audacious questions.
Yes.
And more recently, and I've embedded this into some of my recent books as well, because my mind, I'm looking for like the why behind it.
Right.
And there's this phenomenon in the human mind called instinctive elaboration, right? So, and basically this is that mechanism of anything that you pose, that question you pose, your mind is obsessed with finding the answer to it. All right. So whatever question you pose, your brain is going to be attuned to your mind is going to be attuned to finding the answer to that question.
Right.
So we all have a dominant question that we're asking often unconsciously as well. And so starting to train yourself through practice to ask an empowering question habitually, but also understanding that this is something that with instinctive elaboration, you can change this. And you mentioned this a couple of times. This is what I want to ask you about. You've mentioned the importance of practice, right? It's difficult to start a practice when everything is going wrong around
Absolutely.
you.
Yes.
So my encouragement today is for folks to get proactive in a practice, but I want to build on a foundation of where is my life headed in the first place? What direction do I want to go? What do I choose? What are the thoughts that I choose? And how you helped to anchor me with that was years ago before I met you through the life visioning process.
Right.
You know, I had the CDs, you know,
Right.
this is when you get the CDs in the mail.
Those are collector's items now.
You know,
people still have them.
And it was so powerful. It changed my life, you know, that led to me meeting you,
Right.
you know, for sure, you know, just being a part, because one of the things that I learned from you is what you focus on expands. What you
Right.
focus on will show up in your life in some form or fashion. And so you became my teacher, you know, virtually, and just going through. But, you know, the thing about me was I practiced.
Right.
Right. So once I got that information, that knowledge in my hand, I put it into place and I worked on it and I worked towards it. And the life visioning process, which is, that's what I want to ask you about. Can you talk about the life visioning process and what it is?
Two things. One, everyone knows what visualization is. Those are the primary steps of metaphysics, that which is beyond the physical realm, where you visualize, you see mentally what you want to bring into manifestation, you feel it emotionally, you describe it, you know, and eventually if you hold that space for a period of time, it will begin to manifest sometimes beyond your imagination. That's the beginning. Now, visioning is the next step. Visioning, you're not visualizing. You're actually asking a question. What is it that's within me that's trying to emerge? I teach that everyone has a meant to be. It could be called the destiny, not a should be. Should be comes from authority figures outside of yourself. The government says you should be this. Your parents say you should do this. Your schooling may say you should do this. But there's something within all of us that's trying to come forward. You're not attracting it. It's not the law of attraction. It's the law of emergence. For instance, an acorn, when planted in the proper soil, doesn't attract an oak tree. The oak tree emerges from the acorn because the oak tree is already in there. The idea, the energy, the intelligence of an oak tree is already within the acorn. In the right condition, it emerges. So there's something within us that's already here. Don't attract it. It emerges from us. So in the visioning process, it's a meditative process in which people go into a state of calm, assurance, feeling tone of love and of peace, either through memory or imagination. And you ask the question, what is it within me that's trying to emerge? What gift am I to contribute to this planet? If they like to use the word God, what is God's idea? Again, not a man. What is God's idea of itself as my life? What is that vision? So when you ask that question sincerely and you're sitting, you begin to activate your spiritual faculty that may be latent because you've been living life primarily through the five senses, navigating through this world. But when you ask that kind of question, you start to open up your spiritual sense and you start to catch a vision for your life. It doesn't come from society, it comes from your soul. And then you ask the question, what is it that I must become in order to bring this vision into manifestation? That's my growing edge. So I start to catch where do I need to grow? Where do I need to change? Not what needs to change out there, what needs to change here. And then thirdly, we ask, what is it that I already have that can be in service to this vision that I'm beginning to articulate? What does that do? I start to place my attention on what I have. What resources do I have? Who do I know? What inner talents do I have that may be taken for granted? What does that do? It makes me start to feel a high state of being and a feeling of having. Now, there's a law in a scripture that says, to he or she who has, more is given. To he or she who has not, even that which they have shall be taken away. It's not personal. It's just a law. If you walk around thinking that you're in a field of abundance, that you have, more shows up. If you walk around thinking, little old me, I don't have anything, all my attention is focused on what I don't have, then that which you do have will be taken away. It's just law. It's not personal. So we start to feel what we have, and then we ask, what is it that no longer serves me that I'm willing to let go? It could be conversations, habits, gossip, certain things that we know aren't good for us, that we just do it anyway. What can I let go of now? And this is not a judgment exercise. It's an awareness exercise. You start to become aware. Oh, I can let go of that now. I can let go of that complaining. So, and then fifthly, we tap into the feeling of willingness. If there's willingness, there's a way. If there's willfulness from the ego, you create a vibrational wall. So we go from trying to make it happen to making it welcome. So that's a brief analysis of the vision process. All those things are meditative processes. So the individual ends up learning to articulate the vision, and then that starts to become more real than obstacles, hindrances, obstructions, and you start to be pulled by your vision. You're no longer pushed by your pain. You're pulled by a vision. And that's the vision process. That's now, it's used everywhere now. It's, corporate America is using it in board meetings. Spiritual communities are using it to get a greater definition of their spiritual community. It's now a part of the metaphysical teachings that I was attacked for years ago. Now people just use the word visioning, it's now a part of the language, So anyway, that's the vision process. That's the analysis of it. The idea is if a person makes that a part of their spiritual practice, they're basically combining meditation with asking empowering questions. And so it is a transformational technology. You're not staying the same and trying to change the world. You're actually changing, and your world changes.
Right. It's so powerful, but we, unfortunately, I know that I grew up, I was very externally directed, and we have the ability to change our reality right now.
Yes.
Right now. And being able to have guidance along the way is one of the great gifts of being connected with you. I get to be there in person now,
Right.
But,
you and your whole family.
Yes.
It's always great to see you guys there.
We're family, and, but we also, again, for those who are resonating with this, and also just, again, to live more intentionally, to live your life on purpose.
Yes.
Like that's why you're here. Stop acting like you're an accident.
Right.
You know what I mean? Is getting connected to inner technology like this. So I highly recommend the life visioning process. Where can people get access to that?
Well, actually, they can get the book. It's called The Life Visioning Process. They can get it from the Agape website, agapelive.com, and go to the bookstore. It's sold everywhere where books are sold. But it's used in so many places now. There are college courses around it now in certain universities. And as I said earlier, there are corporate America, and they're doing it because what they discovered after The Secret was released many years ago, I was in that movie. They're discovering when their staff and their employees are at a higher level, they're more productive. So they're bringing it in more as a profit thing. When the staff is much more coherent and they're living at a much dynamically higher purpose, they become better employees. So it's being used for different reasons. But yeah, they can get the life visioning process right off our website or anywhere books are sold.
Yeah. And also you have a great gift that you're providing people with on a regular basis now, new content, interviews, teachings from you through Take Back Your Mind podcast. You mentioned it a little bit earlier, but
right.
Big shout out to the Take Back Your Mind podcast.
Yeah, and you were one of my first guests on there.
Yeah.
And Take Back Your Mind, that name, and it's actually the name of a book I've written. I haven't released it yet because I still am fooling around with it. But it really took off really fast. And so I have guests on there every week. Sometimes I do solo shows, and the different guests are showing their own ways in which they have taken back their mind and become a more of a creative energy in the world and not succumbing to circumstances or situations. So it's a very popular, growing podcast.
Yeah. And this is available wherever you're listening to this podcast. Of course, you can find Take Back Your Mind. If you're watching on YouTube,
right? Shout
out to everybody watching on YouTube. But leave a comment below.
Definitely.
And share some love.
Share some
with
love.
Michael Beckwith.
Listen.
All right? Share what did you pick up from this episode? Share your heart.
Yeah.
I want him to be able to see this. Share that love. Share your heart down in the comment section. If you're listening to the audio, go over to the YouTube channel. All right. Subscribe to the Model Health Show. We're doing some cool stuff.
Subscribe. It helps the algorithm so that people will find it better, and you'll become a part of a larger group that's asking higher questions, and you'll be making a difference on the planet just by subscribing.
That's facts. That's facts. And also, Take Back Your Mind is on YouTube as well.
Yes.
So people can find your work, incredible videos and talks that you've done, and Agape,
yes.
also live streams,
yes.
So many great resources. We'll put everything for you in the show notes. You're one of my favorite human beings.
You too, man. You and your whole family, we're like tight.
Yeah, yeah. So I appreciate you so much for coming to hang out and share your wisdom. And listen, again, if you're not already subscribed to Take Back Your Mind, pop over there, subscribe. It's one of the few shows I pop on. I literally was just listening to an interview that you did this week, actually. With Greg Braden.
Oh, yes.
And so I'm always tapping in, especially it's really good food for your soul.
Yeah.
Really, it truly is. And so again, I appreciate you so much for coming to hang out.
Hey, it is my joy, man. The Model Health Show, it's where to go.
Hey, if you like this video, make sure to check out this video right here.
Because you're the one that controls the chemistry. You don't need the drug. You can heal yourself if you have the right picture. You don't have the right picture, you try to compensate with pharmaceutical drugs. And I go, worst thing possible.